On episode 10 of Confessions of a Marketer, we're talking innovation districts. Mark Reed Edwards here. We're talking with Chuck Tanowitz, director of the N-Squared Innovation District, on today's episode. A brief program note, this is episode 10, and we're going to take a break for the holidays. We'll be back in the new year with a raft of great new episodes. More to come on that soon. We're on innovation districts this episode. Anyone who knows anything about technology knows Route 128. Companies on or around it were at the heart of the Massachusetts miracle back in the 1980s, and it has been at the center of technological breakthroughs for decades. Newton and Needham, Massachusetts straddle 128 in a unique arrangement of geography, demographics, and commerce. Chuck Tanowitz is director of the N-Squared Innovation District and is charged with taking business in a swath of that area to the next level. Innovation districts are a hot business and political topic, so I thought I'd go right to Chuck to get the scoop. So let's get to the discussion. Well, Chuck Tanowitz, welcome to Confessions of a Marketer.
Thank you for having me.
So it's something we've all heard about, but what exactly is an innovation district?
As a general idea, an innovation district is a place that a municipality has said, this is where we really want to encourage companies to come in and to work as a community, because that's really what works in innovation, is these happy accidents, people working together, that sort of thing. So if you think about, there's innovation districts like the South Boston waterfront, like the N-Squared Innovation District, those sorts of things that have been kind of declared and we're working toward a goal. And there are those that sort of develop over time and eventually emerge into that way, like Kendall Square. And then it's really about this combination of businesses and urban planning and transportation to keep that alive and all those elements that go into it. It's one thing to have a bunch of offices near each other. That's a suburban office park. It's quite another to encourage people to get out of their offices and interact, creating street life, creating retail, creating coffee shops, those kinds of things that drive this creative force that helps the innovation economy to grow.
So you're probably biased, but why is an innovation district important? What's the significance of declaring an innovation district?
A lot of it's really, it's more than marketing. It's kind of what it is.
Right.
So let me back up a moment. And if you look at what economic development is, on one level, economic development is marketing just for municipalities. Mm-hmm. So how do you brand a state like Massachusetts? How do you brand a state like Massachusetts against, say, for example, New Hampshire or New York or San Francisco, and what it makes the state attractive? That's where economic development is. The other part of that, though, is not just marketing it, but actually driving the change that needs to happen. I just came out of a meeting a few minutes ago about transportation. How do we make sure that people can get in and out of here? Having a bunch of companies here without support from the higher level business community and the municipalities that say we need to fix our transportation problems doesn't actually solve those. So
and
you're not going to hang on to those companies.
It's not just putting new off-ramps or on-ramps on the highway. It's about public transportation.
It's about public transportation. It's about looking at the use of transportation management associations, shuttle buses, biking, covered bike parking, bike sharing, looking at how do we manage the zoning so that we encourage more shared use of transportation. So, for example, yes, those on-ramps are there from 128, but do we encourage other types of uses and to get additional shuttle buses to come? Where are people coming from? How do we get them there? TripAdvisor has its own shuttle bus program that runs people not just from the T nearby here, but from downtown. Because they looked at the demographics and said, where do people live and how do they need to get here? How do we work one-on-one with people so they think about their own transportation in and out of this area so they do it in a way that is efficient?
For listeners who don't know, TripAdvisor, this big travel company, has a huge office in this area right on Route 128.
Exactly, and that we're building our innovation district kind of around where they put themselves. Mm-hmm. The idea being that there's 1,000 people there that we want to work with. The neighbors want to get to know them. Other big names in the area, Shark Ninja and Big Belly Solar. I was in Big Belly just this week, and people were saying, oh, we've met the guys at Shark Ninja. We have lunch with them. We talk with them. Folks at Caminario who have lunch regularly with people that they know at Big Belly. That kind of interaction needs a place to happen. It needs a way to happen. Somebody said to me that they go for a walk along the river and pet all the dogs. you're going to meet somebody if you pet a dog, right? But you got to have a place to take them, which means you need dog-friendly offices. Like all these pieces come into play. That doesn't just happen. People think it just happens, but planning departments of municipalities are working. You have, and some really great dedicated people in planning departments. And then there's city municipalities. So this planning department then needs to run up against the city or town officials and make them sure they're on board. Somebody needs to help advocate for that. Somebody needs to convene all these things. That's where that innovation district comes through. In Boston, one of the best things that they did, Mayor Menino did this as they were building the innovation district in the South Boston waterfront, was to build District Hall. Mm-hmm. That didn't just happen, right? The builders just didn't say, hey, let's create this building here. Right. It took an advocate to say to the developers, we want this kind of structure. Oh, and by the way, we're going to bring in a group that is going to manage it. And they're going to make sure that we have food and make sure that there's catering and make sure that there's a place and a process. And sustainable. And there's programming so that the programming continues. Yeah. That didn't just happen.
Right. It's the same with open space or bike paths or walking paths, which are often neglected in the business area of a city, but it's really important.
Business is not done on its own. Business is an ecosystem, and that ecosystem needs to be developed in a certain way. Not everybody's going to do it perfectly. We all stumble, but it does need the advocacy and the direction and somebody looking at that ecosystem saying, how do we do this? Bringing people around the table to say, how do we all do this together? Not everybody's going to agree. Right. Believe me, plenty of disagreements, but hopefully together we can create something better.
You spent a career in marketing. You ran your own agency and you came out of journalism. How has your new role surprised you, and what parallels do you see to the previous part of your career?
The parts. Let me start with the parts that are easier, and that's the parts that are parallels. Economic development is marketing for cities. It's ultimately what it is. So all that background in understanding storytelling and how to craft a message and how to get that out. That's key to this job. I need to give the brokers air cover for promoting this area. So I need to create the marketing materials. I need to create the articles and that sort of thing.
Right.
The thing that surprised me most when I started this is the extent to which real estate drives the innovation economy that nobody really thinks about. If you think about the CIC, the Cambridge Innovation Center, and why it exists and why it is where it is. Yes, MIT is there, but MIT had been there for years. How did that come about? And it really has to do with a drop in the market and somebody who had a glut of space and saying, oh, there are a bunch of companies in here. And then over time, it becomes something. Co-working is remarkably changing the market in
like
ways.
WeWork and places like that.
Yes. And these are things that technology folks don't think about. For example, years ago, you used to say, if you're building an office, you need to put in offices. You need to put 120, 150 square feet per person. Some of the co-working spaces are building themselves to 60 square feet per person and then treating themselves a little bit more like a gym where your capacity, your rental capacity is greater than your physical capacity.
Right.
So each desk, you have to figure what is the utilization rate and how many people can I rent this to. So suddenly, a lot of people in a very small space. That changes the dynamic and what that does to then the traditional office build out. And then there's questions of, all right, how do you encourage people from a marketing perspective? How do you encourage people to leave that environment and move into another environment? And one of the things we're finding is that companies at a certain point need to develop their own culture. They need to kind of change. And being in a co-working space, you're kind of picking up their culture, and that's great. At a certain point, maybe you want your own. How do you do that? What do you take with you? But then at the same time, making that affordable.
Well, Chuck, best of luck with the N Squared Innovation District.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on Confessions of a Marketer.
Thank you.
I really want to thank Chuck for being a guest here on Confessions of a Marketer. We're taking a break for the holidays. I hope you have a relaxing and enjoyable holiday season and a great new year. This episode of Confessions of a Marketer was written, produced, and edited by yours truly. T. Jordan of A-Class Productions wrote the theme music. Confessions of a Marketer is a trademark of Reed Edwards Global Inc., and this episode is copyright 2017. I'm Mark Reed Edwards. See you in 2018.